Hi guys, it's Kat. Today, I'm going to show you how to build this living room set that looks like it's straight out of a 90s American sitcom. This room is complete with a corduroy couch, an armchair, a coffee table, a bunch of decor, cabinets, and of course a staircase that leads nowhere. This is not actually a real miniature living room, but instead it's a stage set from the show Helluva Boss. Helluva Boss is a comedy series that's gained a very loyal fan base. This set is from an episode where the main character is put on stage. I recently got these figurines from the sponsor of today's video, Youtooz, and I built this set to house them. Let's start the build and I'll show you how it all fits together. For the main structure of this piece, I'll be using these square sheets of basswood that are 12 inches by 12 inches. They're only 3mm thick, so they're pretty easy to cut without using any special tools. You'll need 8 of these sheets in total for this project. And to build a structure, I first glued 2 of these square panels together. This will be our floor. I'll also put up 2 panels on either side for the side walls, and 2 at the back for the back wall. But let's work on the floor first. I glued these panels together with Eileen's tacky glue, but you can also use wood glue. Like you've seen me do in previous videos, I'll be using this iron-on veneer strip for the look of floorboards. This veneer is made of real wood and will take stain beautifully. I cut strips of varying sizes with a scissor. This is really easy to do, but it is also super time consuming. After you have your strips all cut out, just iron them on horizontally, making sure to stagger the different sizes for a more realistic look. I'm actually using a mix of 2 different veneers here. Some strips are birchwood and some are maple. This isn't necessary, but I like the variation in the wood tones. Once all the flooring is ironed on, I simply cut off the excess veneer with a utility knife. You'll notice that I only added veneer about 2/3 of the way up the floor. That's because this back area is where the staircase and closets will be. For the stain we'll be using on the floors, I just mixed some acrylic paint with water. This paint is in the color Burnt Sienna. Brush on thin coats of it across the floor. You can add more layers for a deeper look or water down your paint water mixture for a lighter look. Make sure not to add too much on at once or you'll risk warping the wood. To match the uneven flooring from the Helluva Boss episode, I add an extra coat of brown stain to a few floorboards just to make them stand out. And now that the floor is done, you can add on those 2 extra panels for the back. The 2 side walls will need a bit of extra work before we can glue them on. The first thing we need to do is cut a 7.5 by 3 inch opening in the center of each panel. I first draw out that area and then use my utility knife to score the wood on both sides. Because the wood is thin, this is relatively easy to cut out. The door I'll be using is actually from a kit and it's pretty easy to assemble. If you don't want to use a kit and instead make your own door, I have a video on how to do exactly that. This door slips perfectly into the opening we cut. I'll paint this door white on both sides. The wall will be this pastel yellow color, so I paint that on now before gluing the walls in place. It took a few coats to get this opaque finish. Next is the staircase. I've shown you how to build a staircase before, but this is a new technique that is way easier. Here are some jumbo craft sticks. They are 3/4 of an inch in width. I use my miter shears to cut lengths that are 3.5 inches long. You'll need 29 of these in total. To build a staircase, take 2 of those lengths that you cut and glue them together at a 90-degree angle. Keep adding more lengths of wood to create a zigzag pattern. Make sure to allow the glue to fully dry before adding on more strips because you don't want it to all fall apart before the glue is dry. Here are all the steps glued together. Now take another one of those 12 by 12 sheets of basswood and cut it diagonally from one corner to the opposite corner. Make sure to cut the wood on both sides and it'll easily break apart. Keep both of these triangles as we'll need them. On one of them, cut 2 inches off from the bottom right side. Now just glue the staircase we built to this triangular wall. For the bottom of the steps, I cut a few more lengths that are 3.5 inches and glue them together to create a square. Glue them to the bottom of the steps to create a landing. Once your stairs are done, you can simply place it inside the house on the back right corner. At this point, I go ahead and paint the wall on the staircase yellow to match the rest of the room. Now take the other triangle we made when we cut the wall for the stairs. Cut off 2 inches from this corner as well. Glue this on the back left side of the room. Make sure to place it 1 inch further back than the wall that we used for the stairs. This area is where we'll be adding our cabinets/bookshelves. For the side walls of the bookshelf, I'll be using these wood sticks that are 1 inch in width. Because we're not going to waste any wood, I'll be using the pieces that we cut out from the door to fill in this back area. I add 4 of these vertically across this area. I also cut another length from the 1 inch wide stick and place it across the top to finish the frame of the bookshelf. I use the same wood stick for the actual shelves in this bookshelf as well. For the cabinet doors, I'll be using these giant craft sticks that I cut. Each cabinet door will be one of these craft sticks. I add a 1/4 inch thin stick of wood to the edge of one side to create more surface area. That additional surface area will allow me to drill a hole into the wood for a pin hinge. I simply use my micro drill to drill a hole into the top and bottom of each of these doors. I added a tiny piece of wire into the opening at the bottom of the door. Then I also drill a hole into the bottom and top of that cabinet. Now I simply push this door into place, making sure the bottom wire fits into the hole. Add some more wire through the top of the cabinet into the door to finish up the hinge. Swing it open and shut to make sure it works. Before I fully set it in place, I paint the cabinet door with a few coats of white paint. All of these cabinet doors will remain the exact same way. The only difference is how tall they are depending on the size of the cabinet. For the baseboards, I paint these 1/4 inch strips of wood in white. Cut them to length and glue them to the bottoms of all the walls. The biggest cabinet door we'll be making is actually this big opening on the left. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be a cabinet based on the show, but I decided to make it one anyway since we're on a roll. I cut this huge rectangle for more base wood. The only difference here are the panel details I added to the front of the door. After painting the door white, I added some wood sticks around the center panel. I used the same technique to make this piece of wood a hinged door. It was at this point that I realized this back wall was completely unnecessary. So I cut the wood on both sides and pulled it out. This was not easy to do and I should have done it from the start. Next up are the door posts on the cabinet. The rectangular ones are just made from strips of coffee stirrer, and the round ones are made from lengths that I cut from a round dowel. I just glue them on. Now let's move back to the staircase. First, I add a piece of trim along the top angle side of this wall. It's just a long strip of wood that I painted in white. For the stair railings, I'll need spokes all the way up this angled area. For that, I'll be using these skewers. I cut them at a 45-degree angle on both ends and glue them up along this angled wall. Make sure to have one for each step. Then you'll add a long strip of wood across all the spokes to finish the handrail. I add another square dowel to the bottom of the staircase for stability. Next, let's make some furniture. I've shown you how to make couches before in several videos. I think I've made about 3 different videos on couches already, so I won't go into too much detail about how to build a structure. I'll just go over the basics of finishing a couch. The fabric I'll use for today's couch will be this brown wife beater shirt. The texture from the vertical lines will give it the look of corduroy on a miniature scale. I cut rectangular sections from the shirt and drape it over my couch structure. I first cover this backrest area using Eileen's tacky glue to hold it in place. To cut off this excess fabric, I use a super sharp X-Acto knife blade and push it against the fabric several times to slice it. I also drape fabric over the armrests and cover the front of them. Once the glue is dry, I trim off the excess fabric with a scissor. The couch cushions are next. These were made with rectangular blocks. I just cover the top and sides with felt to give it more cushioning. Then cover that up with fabric. I fold over all 4 sides and then cut the corners. Add a drop of glue to the corners to seal them up and the cushion is done. Add the cushions to the couch. This couch has 3 cushions. You can use round dowels or square dowels for the legs, but I decided to 3D model this simpler version. Doing it this way allows me to add on all 4 legs at once and the legs are much stronger. This living room set also has this 1-seat armchair. For the chair, I'm using this tan sweater fabric. I just follow the same steps to cover the chair. This sweater fabric tends to fray a bit, so I add some glue to the edges to seal them. Now these chairs can go in the center of our living room. Next, Next up is a simple coffee table. I just cut a rectangle of wood 3.5 inches by 2 inches from scrap wood. For the legs, I'm using these square dowels. Each one is 1.5 inches long, and I glue one to each corner. This coffee table goes right in front of our chairs. If you feel like something's missing, you'd be right. These 3 pieces need a rug underneath them. I cut a piece of white felt into an 8 inch by 5.5 inch rectangle and place it on the floor before putting the furniture on top. Now these 3 pieces look like a cohesive set. Next up is a little console table for the left wall. I made this using a similar technique to the coffee table. The tabletop is 1 inch by 2.5 inches, and these skinny square dowel legs are 2.5 inches long. The only difference here is that I added some pieces of coffee stirrer below the tabletop to make it look more robust. Then simply add the table to the left wall right next to the door. Now it's time for decor. Let's add some picture frames all around this living room. To create a picture frame, I just glued together a few lengths of craft matchsticks into rectangles. Make an assortment of different sizes for the different frames. Then I printed out a few images to match the frame pictures from the show. These aren't exactly what's in the show, but they look pretty close. I glued the frames right on top of the pictures and then cut them out. This is a super easy way to create miniature framed art. I glue them onto the wall, making sure they match as closely as possible to what I saw from the show. Here I made another one of these console tables. For this one, I added a wooden top using a piece of jumbo craft stick. Place this on the wall behind the couch. Before we go any further, I had to add some veneer at the back of these bookshelf areas. The veneer will cover up the Frankenstein patchwork that I did back here. Here is an assortment of various shapes that I 3D printed for the decor. These are made from basic shapes like cones, spheres, and rectangular prisms. I added a few coats of paint and they're ready to go around the room. I placed them around the bookshelves and on the tables. We're almost done, guys. Next, I created this really simple plant stand that just joined together. This is perfect to hold the monstera plant that I've shown you how to make in a previous video. Also from a previous tutorial are these couch cushions. You can also add a piece of felt to the back of this couch to match the show, but I didn't like how that looked, so I'm not going to use it. Finally, it's time to bring in our guests of honor. These are the 3 characters from the Helluva Boss show that we'll be putting into our set. We have Blitz, Stolas, and Luna. These were sent in by the sponsor of today's video, Youtooz. Youtooz has an incredible assortment of figurines from so many popular shows. These figurines are packaged beautifully and they're true works of art. You can see how detailed the paint job is on each one. All of them fit perfectly in our 1 to 12 scale setting. Now that they're here, they'll probably create havoc in this room. And that's it, this living room stage set is all done. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new today. I'll see you next time, bye!